set my little sights in Dawson Springs, Kentucky for Hollywood without even really knowing what I was doing. I hadn't gotten into movie magazines or whatever, but I set my sights somehow there because I had seen these movies. So we moved from Dawson Springs, Kentucky. My father was with the telephone company, and he got another job as a manager in Fulton, Kentucky, which was about, 100 or so miles from there. And there I really became a full-blown movie fan because we moved there when I was 9 years old, and that's where I wrote my first fan letter to Billy Dove and got a picture from her. Her studio sent me that picture. And then I began to go to the movies, and from then on I began to read the magazines, and then I knew a little bit about where I was going and how I was going to do it. Now, one of the things my little mind conjured up was I was a director in Hollywood, a very famous director named Norman Taurog. He had just won an Academy Award in 1932 for directing Jackie Cooper, there's his picture up there, in Skippy. And I thought, okay, he works with a lot of child actors, so I'm going to write him a fan letter because I really thought those pictures were great. So when I was about 14, I guess, I sat down and wrote a fan letter to Norman Taurog. And of course, I tried to pretend, like I really wasn't trying to get a job from him. I just told him what it was, about my life and so forth, but how much I admired him as a director and the pictures, which was true, Now, for a young kid of about 14, as he wrote a letter back to me, a wonderful letter, and he sent me this autographed picture that's here on the wall. And he said it was so unusual for a kid that young to write to a director. Now, let me tell you a wonderful thing that happened. His secretary kept every one of my letters because we kept up a correspondence right on down until the day, from that day when I was 14 till the day I got to Hollywood in 1957 when I was 37 years old. We kept a continual thing going there. And his secretary had kept all my letters, and when I went into the theater, after I wrote him the letter telling I was going into the Summer Theater in 1948, he had all those letters bound and given to me for a Christmas present. So Norman Taurog figured greatly in my eventually getting to Hollywood because he was keeping an eye on me. So finally, of course, as time went along, he was aware early in the game, and I didn't think he was, that I wanted to be an actor. I finally got to the university from Fulton, Kentucky, and I did plays in Fulton, Kentucky. Then I went to Murray State University, and there I also got very active in dramatics. And that's when I really knew in my heart that I was going to have to be an actor. But I got a teaching degree there, so I could teach school. I could have it in my back pocket. Also, I learned shorthand and typing, which literally helped me all the way down the line. I graduated from the university in 1942. I got into the Navy, U.S. Naval Intelligence. I went into the Navy for 4 years. I did nothing there, but I kept in touch with Norman Taurog. Then after I got back, of course, was when I got a job with National Cash Register. That was in 1946. I worked for them 2 years, and they were getting me all set to be one of their top salesmen when I said, hey, I can't do this. I want to be an actor. And that's when I walked away from National Cash Register Company, and that's when I applied to go to Summer Theater in 1948, where Jack Lemmon and I were roommates. So after studying 2 years at the Neighborhood Playhouse, where I studied with Sandy Meisner, I got some of the best training in the world. 2 solid years of training with Martha Graham and David Pressman and Sandy Meisner. As a matter of fact, after I graduated, Sandy gave me a scholarship in his classes. I worked in classes with Grace Kelly, Steve McQueen, Leslie Nielsen, Joanne Woodward, because Sandy Meisner told me before he accepted me for the Neighborhood Playhouse, he said, now Hal, we got to do one thing. We got to clean up that accent, that Southern accent, because it's going to hold you back in the theater. It's going to label you. It's going to type you, So we worked hard, and we did get over that accent. Well, what do you think the first part I got on Broadway was? The part of the Southerner in Mr. Roberts. Josh Logan, they saw me in a play, an agent saw me in a play at the Playhouse, and Mr. Roberts was toward the end of its run with Henry Fonda. And they sent me over to read for another part, and Josh Logan heard me, and he says, where are you from? And I said, originally Kentucky. He said, give him the Southerners part. So here I was, after all those years of studying to get it out of my system, the Southern accent. My first role on Broadway was a Southerner, and it was a thing that catapulted me right on through. Right after that, of course, I stayed in New York for about 11 years and got good training on the stage. And that's when Norman Taurog called me one day, and he said, Hal, I'm doing a picture out here with Andy Griffith called Onion Head. He says, I think I have a part for you in it. Well, of course, hey, I wanted to go to Hollywood. I probably should have stayed on Broadway longer because I just made a hit in a play called Hatful of Rain. And I'd gotten better reviews as Steve McQueen got in the same role, so I should have stayed there. But I was so eager to get to Hollywood that I came on out. And here was Norman Taurog, after all those years of writing him the fan letter when I was 14. Now it's 1957, I'm about 37 years old, and I'm on my way to Hollywood to do my first film in Hollywood at Warner Brothers with Andy Griffith in a nice sort of featured role. But the strange part of it was, you don't see me with any billing because my agent forgot to get me billing in Onion Head, the first thing, big picture I did. But before I did that, I had done a small film in New York City. One of the agents there had seen me on the stage, and they were filming a film called The Cop Hater. And it's with Robert Loggia and Gerald O'Loughlin, and I played the killer in that. So I got in some good film time before I went to Hollywood to do my first film, Onion Head, at Warner Brothers. Here I am. I didn't get all those things I prayed for. I didn't even become a star. I didn't become a featured player. I didn't become a household name. But I stayed in the business, and look around me. Look at the happiness where I live, how happy I am. And of course, it has a lot to do with my underlying faith, because I think life is hard as it is, but you've got to live it moment to moment, just moment by moment, one step at a time. And you know, you've got to have something there undergirding you, so when you run into all of this tremendous rejection, I mean, acting is just total rejection everywhere you go. You've got to be able to rise above it. You've got to be able to come back. You've got to be able to go down and come back and get knocked down and come back. And somewhere my faith allowed me to hold on to such a way, and that goes way back to my youth. When I was in the Baptist church, my great-grandfather was a Baptist minister, and my grandfather was in the church, and we never were churchy people, but I had a great undergirding factor in me that let me know that I had to depend on something bigger than myself when the going got rough, and that no matter what happened to me, I could make it through life. I could just have that faith and belief in myself. But I had to have that faith in somebody bigger than me in order for me to go through all these tough years. And I just thank God that I had that. And when I think of the young people today, and they ask me, they say, hey, what do we do? How do we get to be actors? I say, hey, I can only tell you one thing, two things, maybe three. Number one, first of all, get an education. I did. Number two, if you want to act in everything possible. Act in high school plays, college plays. I did all this. Number three, get yourself some really good training after you got out of college. While you're in college, get all the dramatic training you can. But after you get out, go to a good dramatic school, neighborhood playhouse like I did. And then after that, you just got to have that kind of faith that tells you that, hey, this is what I want. Now, I tell you this. I tell them, if there's something you'd rather do just that much, you better go for that. Because remember, when you go for the acting prize or the prize in this business, you're going for a big prize that a lot of other people are going for, and you're going to have an awful lot on the ball. Not only talent, it takes more than talent to go where you want to go. That's where that faith comes in, and knowing it's a moment at a time, a minute at a time, and also realizing that, hey, if I don't have a faith somewhere else, I'm not going to make it. And that was the kind of thing that allowed me to overcome these things and go right ahead, so that today I was able to do these films. I did a lot of small parts. I got to work with a lot of these, even some of these actors that I worshiped, you know. Strangely enough, I didn't, and my idol is Clark Gable. Now, Clark Gable's been my favorite ever since I was about, 12 years old. When I went to see him, I think in an early film, I believe it was Red Dust, was the first film in 1932. Jean Harlow and Clark Gable were my favorites of all the movie stars. And of course, the big thing when I got out here, I wanted to work with Gable. Well, you know, I came so close to it about 1 year after, I think I got out here in 57. In 1958, I was up for a part in a movie called Run Silent, Run Deep. And doggone it, they hired another fella for the role. I think they hired him because he was a blonde and I was a brunette, and I came so close to working with Gable. And but I tell you, I did get to be I did get to be around Gable. Clark Gable and I had the same barber. That's my claim to fame with Gable. When I first came out here, I went to a friend of mine and I said, I need a good barber. And so he belonged to Bel Air Country Club. And he says, we got a great one to Bel Air Country Club. So I went out there, and it turned out I told the guys, I said, now, don't cut my hair too high because my ears are big and they'll stick out. And I don't want to. And he says, well, it never bothers Gable. And I said, no, do you know Gable? He said, sure, I cut his hair. And I said, what? And I said, do you suppose sometimes maybe you could, line me up with an appointment right with when Gable was? He said, sure, we'll do that. So sure enough, one day he lined my appointment up, and I walked in while Gable was having his hair cut. I got to meet him and talk to him, and man, what a wonderful, wonderful guy, one of the greatest guys in the world. I just am so sorry I didn't get that part in Run Silent, Run Deep, because a couple of years later, he was dead. He was gone. But Clark Gable has been probably the greatest influence in my life. Most young kids, when I grew up, they were baseball players, and Babe Ruth was a hero. Well, I was too short to play, when I was in high school, I was about that high. So my hero became Clark Gable. I don't think you could have a better hero. And wasn't I happy just recently to attend the Golden Boot Awards. Some friends of mine here on the campus said, Hal, would you like to go to the Golden Boots this year? Because they're honoring Clark Gable's 100th birthday. That was last year. He was born in 1901. And they said his young son, John Clark Gable, is going to be there. I said, oh, yes. So the people here in the foundation set it up so that my table was just practically right next to John Clark Gable Jr.'s. I got to go to the Golden Boots where I heard Clark Gable's life. They did a whole thing about it. It was just magnificent. And I got to meet the boy and talk to him. So my Clark Gable connection has been a fantastic one. It's been a great one in my life, and I got to meet the son. And I understand that the son is going to be able to come out here at the cottage and visit me one of these days soon.
Well, having met Hal at the Motion Picture TV Fund, I felt that his life story was just so extraordinary, given that the range of experiences and the people that he'd met was so interesting, and he himself is such an incredibly colourful character that I really wanted to put that on film and share his story with other people.
All right, everybody, that's been today's show, and I thank you so much for tuning into this edition of Pictures in Motion. Now, for more information regarding the West Valley Indie Fest, all you got to do is email. I'm your host, Tia J., and thanks so much for watching.